In this episode of the Therapy Dogs Australia podcast, Sam sits down with Brianna Mackay from Canine Essence, one of our locum dog trainers who conducts temperament assessments for Therapy Dogs Australia teams. Brianna shares valuable insights from her work with handlers and their dogs at different stages of their journey, whether just starting out or freshly graduated. This episode includes tips on building strong handler-dog relationships, phasing out food rewards, and tailoring training to each dog's needs. It's an encouraging and informative listen for anyone preparing to work with their therapy dog.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Therapy Dogs Australia podcast. Today, we are very lucky to have the lovely Miss Brianna Mackay. Brianna is a dog trainer in South Australia and has been doing our temperament assessments for like a heap of our teams down there for quite a while. And so we have a little catch up on the emails from time to time, and we would love to do a bit of a group think today and share some of the insights that Brianna has learned from the teams as they come through their assessments, and just provide a little bit more information for all of our teams who are starting their training, want to start their training, or even, halfway through their training or whatever, finished and reassessing or whatever it might be. So we're going to get in pretty deep to the dog training stuff today. We're going to probably use a fair bit of lingo, but we'll make sure that we use the layman's terms for stuff as well. So welcome, Brianna.
For sure. Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm very excited.
We're very pleased. So do you want to tell us a little bit about your dog training company, Canine Essence?
For sure. For sure. So Canine Essence basically came about because I'd been a dog trainer for about 10 years with a lot of sporting kind of background, and I really enjoyed that. But I ended up working in the car industry for a while and hated selling cars. It was really, really boring. It's not a great gig through COVID. And so my partner actually said to me at the time, he goes, "Why don't you just go back to dog training? You loved it. Like, I've got all the business skills, so I'll do the back end stuff. You can do all of the dog training and client stuff."
God.
And I think, it was the perfect timing for us. So we did that a little over 2 years ago, I think it is. And the kind of goal was being with Canine Essence, having that in the name of understanding the essence of your dog. So understanding actually why they do what they do, and that's kind of who they are, and they've all got their little quirky personalities, and rather than suppressing that, let's see if we can find a really good outlet for that. So it kind of tied my love of sport and then helping people with behavioral cases kind of all together. So that's sort of us.
Yay, how brilliant. So, well, and I love the name and I love everything behind the name. I think it's good to have names like that remind us of those things, remind us
Absolutely.
this is all about figuring out our dogs, and learning to live
Absolutely.
with them, then their best versions of themselves, which we love.
For
and
sure.
It's super important for therapy dogs. Very, very important. Okay, cool. So been doing our temperament assessments and helping some of our teams. So if anyone's in South Australia, Brie also helps some of our teams prepare for their assessments and helps with individual training. Do you run classes?
Yeah, so most of the week I'm pretty much doing behavioural work, and then we do classes and stuff on a Saturday. But some of my clients will do like a one-on-one session to prepare for their therapy assessments, or we'll sort of piece it together depending on what they need and where they're up to. So, yeah.
Which I love because it's really nice. Like, we do all our training online, which is great, but it's got limitations. And I love that we've got quite a few locum trainers all over the country that are as involved as you are. And I really love that because it means that our teams have a relationship with someone, a great quality trainer in their area. And once they develop that relationship, it makes life so much easier. They can get that hands-on help with their dogs. A couple of things that, they might have learnt most stuff online, and then they just need to refine a few things, or because we're dealing with beginner handlers a lot of the time. Not all the time, but a lot of the time these are beginner handlers, aren't they, Brie?
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. It's it's nice because they get all the theory from you guys and they get all of that. But then sometimes that gets lost in translation a little bit, and they go, "Yeah, Sam said to do this." And I'm like, I'm pretty sure Sam wouldn't have said to do, like, she might have meant something a bit different. So we can kind of workshop it a bit more practically with the dog. So it's good.
Well, you never know, because I do say some pretty wild shit sometimes. So, to give people the benefit of the doubt as well. I think the other thing that happens is that because we're in group training, a lot of the time we have got our self-paced guys who go through individually, but most of our teams go through group training. And so they might see something that was said to another dog as well, like another dog and team, and then, don't think to ask the question at the time or follow up or whatever, but then kind of apply that information generally across dogs. But like you were just describing, we try to give really specific, like, this is for you and your dog. Like, we've got our general method, and then we've got how we make that specific to each dog and handler team. And I like to really take into account the handler. Like, I really like to kind of get to know the handler a little bit and kind of figure out, and then the relationship that the handler already has with the dog is really important to me too. And what parts of that are they happy with and they don't want to give away? And then what parts of that are they not happy with and they'd like to improve? And I think it's important for me to respect that. Like, if you've got people live with their dogs differently. Like, if people saw how I live with my dogs, they'd probably be like, no way. Like,
my clients would lose it if they saw the things that my dog got away with. But, actually my mum says this to me all the time. She goes, yes, but you know what you're prepared to live with your dogs. Like, her border collies are not allowed on the couch, but when I go over, they're allowed on the couch because I'm prepared to live with that. Yeah. So it just depends. And if you're not seeing a problem from a dog in that context, so if the dog's not jumping on the couch and like biting you, then you don't really have to manage that.
Yeah, and I feel like I hear the same thing echoed by most dog trainers as well, where if you like actually came to our houses and saw like our dogs, they'd live in the best life. Like, they're just doing all sorts of shit that a lot of pet homes, they're not into that, like, whereas we're like epic super dog people. So I'm happy for my dogs to be doing all sorts of different stuff, but we've also got those management tools. We've also got our body language stuff and things like that. And we can pick up quite quickly, this is going to turn into a problem, probably. So we might need to.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I've got that at the moment, actually. I've just hatched a heap of baby chickens. And since last year, one, we've got Staffy now. So the prey drive's pretty high. But two, my Labrador and my Staffy and my Kangal have taught themselves to be mouse hunters. And that is like their favorite activity in the world, because we've got mice in the barn, mice in the shed.
Yeah.
And they're pretty, like, Nala's really good at it. Like, she'll get them. And my Kangal is, for a big, lanky dog, her precision and the way she can move, like, because she is a Gumby wolf of a thing, the way that she can get a mouse is like, I'm impressed. Anyway, so all of them have gotten a few, right? So they've been, I've talked about this podcast before, I think. They've been hugely reinforced from this game. But I didn't think, I don't care, chase the mice, whatever. I don't have a cat, so get the mice. Baby chickens sound
totally different. Yeah.
They squeak. They are squeaky.
Yeah.
They are small. They are fluffy, and they run really fast. So now,
and they zigzag.
Around. And I've got them in brooders, and in the brooders, they make my brooders are made out of wood, so they make scratchy noises, which they sound like mice. They do sound like mice. Smell like different.
Yeah.
But they sound like mice.
Yeah.
And I've got some pretty intense looking at the chickens happening from the dogs. And I'm like, because last year the dogs were living with the chickens running around them all the time. Like, they unsupervised.
Yeah.
Like, they were just.
But adult chickens are so different. Yeah.
So different. But the chicks that I hatched last year, the dogs hadn't become mice hunters then. They hadn't learnt that game of like, this is the best thing in the world.
Switched. Yeah.
We hadn't flicked that switch. Yeah. So now we have. So now I'm like, oh, okay, we're going to have to improve our management around the brooders, but also really take some time to, like, I'm getting intensity from the dogs, that stare. really intensely.
Mm.
Oliver's all right, my border collie. But yeah,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
these things happen, and then we have to go, oh yeah, I can see how this can become a problem. So yeah, more
Absolutely.
time spent on teaching the dogs that they'll grow out of it. The chickens will grow out of it looking like mice. Do you know what I mean? They will look
Yes,
like
yeah.
chickens soon. So
Exactly.
I've just got to,
Exactly.
in the meantime, be careful. But
I
anyway.
totally get it. I've got Jack Russell and we do a sport called Earth Dog where we go into the tunnels and
Oh my
they've got
God.
to get to the end of the tunnel and find like the little, it used to be a rat, which we don't use anymore because, you know, obviously we need to keep everything ethical. So we use a little toy or something, but it very heavily replicates the like going under the ground, finding it. In some of it, they drag it back out through the tunnel and like you just see their little eyes and their little terrier bodies shaking and squealing. It's full on, but he'll do that in the context of sport. But if he sees a live mouse somewhere, he's like, I don't know what you want me to do with this. So he's a great working dog in one sense and then totally not in the other. So I think management is huge as well. And like contextually what you let them get away with, you know, they piece it together a little bit.
Yeah, that's a really good point because our therapy dogs have similar dynamics like that. So sometimes people will say to me, oh, my dog does, because everyone that has a dog, not everyone, people often live in families and they've got people at home who are doing weird stuff with the dog. They're not following whatever rules and stuff like that. And that can be really frustrating and it can cause you some dramas. But what I find and try and help people not freak out too much is that the majority of the work that I do with my dogs is one-on-one with me in a different setting. And so once the dogs like go to work or they're in their workroom and they're just with me, they seem to really understand like these are the work rules. Like this is how we behave at work. And at home, that's another context, and can be around people, like you're saying with your mum's dogs, your mum's border collies. It can be that like when dad gets home, we know we can do rough personal play, like rough housing with the dog, because that's who we're allowed to do that with. There's definitely dogs that I think need more structure and consistency with that stuff. And especially like mouthing, like we're really firm on our therapy dogs aren't mouthing because it's essentially biting and the clients don't like it. So with mouthing, I find that stopping the mouthing completely at home really helps stop the mouthing in play. But there's lots of other stuff that can be really context specific. And as long as we get our dogs into our workplaces with a clear idea about what that needs to look like, and we are super consistent, like I'm consistent with my dogs, this is what is happening here, this is what the expectation is here. And because when you're working with your dogs, they're with you all the time, like they're under your supervision all the time, or they're put away. So really there's not that much room for the unwanted behaviors to be reinforced, because there's not the opportunity for all that self-reinforcing, because we just manage and make sure that the dogs can't do those behaviors at work. And it's like pretty quick that they can pick that up, this is just how we behave here. Just like your Jack Russell's like, oh, I'm going to sport, so I'm gonna go in the tunnel and get the thing, and then see this prey thing in another context and like, I don't feel anything towards
100%. It's really interesting because we do a variety of sports, and one of the concerns that I had at the start with him was like, if we're doing a chasing prey based sport, how is that going to impact my like obedience sport? But the second that I switch his collar or lead over to his obedience lead and he goes, oh, okay, it's time to work, and I give him that ready to work cue, he's like, no, I'm in an obedience focused mindset now. So I think like switching between drives is important, but also having them go, oh no, in this context, this is what is appropriate and this is the rules in this game that I'm playing, versus the other game where I can be a bit more silly, or, you know, like you were saying, he'll have different rules for me versus with my partner. My partner will come home and let him rough him up and do all the rest of it. But he won't do that with me because he knows that that's not the game we play. We play really intentional games. So I think that's a big thing for people with like huge families where they've got, you know, lots of kids and coming in and out and, you know, all of that sort of stuff. I think that's really important for them to go. Obviously, we don't want your kids taking the dogs out and letting them cause chaos and, you know, dragging the dog down the street and like having all that kind of happen. But when the dog's working with you, it's going to be very different because the dog goes, right, with this person, I have these set of rules as well. So it's a bit of management, but it's also a bit of context for the dog too.
Yeah. Yeah. And consistency within that relationship and that context is, I think, quite key. And clear communication as well. Cool. Okay. So we've got
Absolutely.
bit of a thing to work on today, which is we were chatting the other day about some of the Therapy Dogs Australia training methods and what we're trying to help people get towards, and then how that sometimes can be interpret, or how that sometimes there's a gap from where getting people from where they are right now to where we're trying to get them to be. And the two things that do pop up are, well, it's sort of one connected thing, but getting our dogs working with us without food rewards. The reason for that, I can't remember if we've talked about this in detail on this podcast before. The reason that we try to get our dogs, we do get our dogs off of food rewards when they're working with us, is because it's a nightmare. If I have to wear a treat pouch or something like that in my work role, just to have my dog walk on the lead nicely, or just to have my dog be able to stay on their mat during this part of someone's, you know, we might be getting on the ground with a client to do painting this session, and I'd like the dog to be on the mat away from whatever right now, or someone brings in a baby or whatever, or someone wants a little bit more space from the dog than what the dog's giving, or the dogs have gotten a little bit high arousal in their play and I want to calm them back down again. It's important to me that I can do that by just asking my dogs, instead of having to put my hand in the treat pouch and kind of go, we'll pay you if you don't do that, or if you come and do this now. So if anyone's got a food driven dog, which most people do, I think you'll find that when you put that treat pouch on, you get a lot of your dog's attention to you. And that's kind of a signal. It's kind of a visual signal to our dogs that, like, hey, you should probably pay attention to me because I'm delivering rewards over here. When we go into a client session, so whether it's, you know, a hospital visit or like my setting, which is private practice with clients, I actually want the dogs to put most of their focus on the client. I want the dog to still be able to hear me and listen to me and check in with me and feel supported by me and things like that. But the interaction, I want to be quite natural between the client and the dog. So I find that not having a treat pouch on my hip means that the dogs go like, oh, well, you're not delivering all of the reinforcement right now, so I might just go see what else I can be reinforced by in this environment. Here's a novel person. I'm a therapy dog. I like people. Let's go see if that person's got some reinforcement that they can give me. And they usually do. So that's when the clients will talk to the dogs, pat the dogs, play with the dogs, you know, ask the dog to sit on the couch with them, stuff like that. And it's important that, so sometimes I'll use modeling in my sessions. So if I want to model, like, this is how I play with the dog, or this is how I talk to the dog, or this is the pats, you know, like I'll pat Nala and she'll lay down and so I can pat her belly, and you're sort of modeling like, she loves her belly pats. And then you'll see the client copy that because they've seen like, oh, that's what the dog likes. But it's really important for me to sort of do a bit of modeling, but then stop interacting with my dog so that the reinforcement stops coming from me, so that the dog goes through that question of like, so who else is here that could reinforce me? And they find the client and go, what about you? Do you know how to pat bellies? And, you know, I've just modeled it, so the client's more likely to do it, figure out that that's where they like their pats, etc. So if I'm wearing the treat pouch though, like especially my dogs, they're very food motivated. all of them, even my Kangal is quite food motivated. And that I think is tricky then for the dogs to go, oh, I'll leave the pouch and just go get a pat from this person. I think it's tricky for me because I don't do a lot of it. Maybe it might be different for other people that have done a lot of sport, but getting my dogs to play with their toys when there's food rewards on offer, my dogs will be more interested in their food rewards. The other reason for that, so what I mean by that in summary is that we want our dogs to be able to focus on the other person who's in the room, who's not their handler. The other issue that we've got is hygiene. So if we're handling dog treats, then we've got dogs eating whatever you're feeding them in a session. That's not that big of a deal unless you're having to feed your dogs really high value, like meat treats, which I would definitely avoid in that kind of proximity to the client's contact. And we've got dogs maybe drooling a bit more, stuff like that. So we've got a few hygiene considerations there. So we want our dogs to be able to be reliable for us without their food rewards. But what people hear when we talk about that, Brie, is, as we know, because some of the feedback that you hear from people is that we're not rewarding the dog, or that we are just like we're not using food at all, or we're not rewarding the dog at all, or we're cutting them off cold turkey. So for a little bit of like behind the scenes for people, we have an online dog training video library, and I demonstrate all of our activities with my dogs. And I did that because we went online when COVID happened, and I had Nala, my Labrador, was like 5 or 6 months old, 5 months old when that happened. So she's out the little demo dog in the videos. So I'm just demonstrating like how to guide her into position, how to ask her into position, and how to guide her into position, and then release her. And her favorite thing is pats and cuddles, right, over play. So the videos are showing like this is how you can do this activity with your dog without food. But my dogs have been taught that from baby, like that we don't rely on food. I use food for puppies to teach them into what words mean and stuff like that. But also living on a farm, it's unrealistic for me to have a treat pouch on me all day, because that would be gross and also pretty inconvenient. So my dogs learn from an early age, like, this is what I've asked you to do. I need you to do that so that you don't get kicked by a horse or hit by that electric fence or bitten by that snake or whatever. So I move pretty quickly from puppy, show you what the things are, use the food, show you that. Yep, cool, got it. Make sure they understand being that negative reinforcement guided into position. Make sure they understand their release words. Make sure they understand, and I understand for them what they like as their reinforcer. So when we remove food or don't rely on food, we actually are replacing that with a different reinforcer, and we've got to use something that the dog is motivated by. And sometimes that means you've got to build your dog's motivation for that thing. So is that pretty much what you're hearing back from people when they're thinking that maybe they've been training their dog with food since they were young, and then they sort of think, Sam said, don't give the dog food. And then how are people hearing that? What are they taking away from that, do you think?
There's usually sort of two ways I think that people are interpreting it. Is like Sam said, don't use food at all ever to teach anything. And so they're just trying to either like not force their dog into positions and doing things, but they're going like, why isn't my dog wanting to do anything? And I'm going, well, we haven't built any value in doing that behavior yet, because you've gone cold turkey right from the word go. And then there's the other people that have done heaps of training with treats, or they're using their good boy and good girl like in their tone, and they're using pats and praise, but they're also maybe phasing those treats out a little bit clunky or a little bit like ripping the band-aid off, and then the dog's having some pretty big withdrawals from that. But I think that like from the context, it's so important that we do phase those rewards out or phase them to at least an intermittent schedule of reinforcement where they're not needing reinforcement every time they do the behavior. I think it depends on what setting you're taking the dogs into. Some dogs are going to be in a higher intensity setting where they might need a bit more reinforcement to kind of keep them happy and focused in that environment. But that is something that I think you were saying in a previous podcast, like you train that aside from in the client session. So you can go to that location and teach the dog to focus in that environment and then bring the client in. So I think that's important though too, to remember that you don't if we just cut off the reinforcement, whatever that is, food, toys, praise, that behavior will go extinct. And so that's where I think a lot of people are sort of struggling because maybe they don't know to use a toy or they don't know how to use a toy to be that reinforcer or how to use pats to get that reinforcement happening. And so I think that's where they get really confused between going from, well, I've just used heaps of food or I've never used food and the dog's not doing anything that I ask. So that's kind of those two that I tend to see.
Yeah. And I think also which pats. So sometimes when people submit their training videos, like during their courses, I'll see them try and so we use free as our release and they'll say free to the dog. And then they do this like type of patting interaction thing with the dog that the dog hates it. And, this is why making videos is so useful is because you might not realize in the moment that the dog doesn't like that, but I can clearly see from this video that the dog doesn't like that. And every dog's different. So some dogs don't want you to like bear hug over the top of them. They don't want you leaning over the top of them. They don't want you patting them on the head. Some people give their dogs a fully big scruff around their head, like free, yay, good dog. And the dog's
too
like,
much, yeah.
holy shit, and they're like, I thought free was good. I'm sorry, because they've been now, even their reinforced release, and to a reward, and their dog's like, what the heck? Because now something immersive is happening.
The release could even be free into the environment, like just go sniff, go back to doing what you were doing, but it has to be reinforcing to the dog in that moment in the context of what you're doing.
And I would love, and back on what you were saying before, so which pats does your dog like? Figure that out. We can help you. Bree can help you. It's all about watching the dog's body language. So I do a consent test. I have to do this with my livestock guardian dog all the time because she is a weirdo. So I think it's appeasement that she has on her face as her facial expression when I pat her. But she's a very big dog and she looks annoyed. So I'm always like, do you hate me? Do you love me? What do you feel towards me? And a really easy way to figure that out, we've got it figured out now. I'm pretty sure I think appeasement is like probably the best way to describe, because she puts her ears back. You know how they sort of flatten their ears back a bit? And I'm like, what do you mean by that though?
Yeah.
Like which ear flattening feeling do you have at the moment, Kiki? I do consent tests. So I will pat her, give her she like scratches on her chest, for example. So I'll be scratching her on the chest and then I stop touching her. And then if she wants me to keep going, she'll either move her body back into me or she swats at me. And then I go, okay. And then I keep patting her chest. And then I stop patting her chest and then see what does she like. Because the last thing I want to do is use up all of her tolerance because I think, oh, she likes this. Scratch, 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 scratch. And the whole time she's like, this bitch has got 2 more scratches, I'm going to bite her. Like, I don't want that to happen. It looks like it would really hurt. So
for sure.
I'm trying to I've done consent tests with every dog I've ever had. I learned it a million years ago. Basically, all you've got to do, interact with your dog in a certain way. And then before they like walk off or whatever, or before you get sick of it, so like in the midst of enjoying the pats, hopefully for both of you, stop patting that area and then see if the dog re-invites you back into those pats. And I think you'll be surprised to find how often dogs will like walk away. Like you'll stop touching them and they'll be like, thank God, like she's done. Thank God. Yeah. So that's one way to sort of try and figure out what pats your dogs like. I mean, some dogs are really obvious, like what they like. Some are probably less so. And then for what play your dog's like, to figure that out, first of all, if you're in South Australia, go and spend some time with Brie or another trainer, guys, off of our list if you're a different state, but also listen to our play podcast that we just did as well, because that will it'll get you started. It'll get you going. And if you haven't done our course before, if you show us in your training videos, you'll be showing us your release. So you're free, and then you'll play with your dogs or your pets or whatever, and we'll be able to give you advice from there. But yeah, at least start with understanding that different dogs like different play. And a lot of it's to do with breed. So understanding your dog and what types of play they like, what types of games they like, and then really tapping into that, or really trying to build your dog's interest in games with you is absolutely key. So we can't, and I think that's where I see a lot of people who've been using heaps of food, and then they go, oh, okay, well, we got to get off of food because we're going to be a therapy dog. And then they think, I've got to do that today. Like right now, today, I've got to do that. So they chuck their treat pouch away, but they haven't yet figured out or built the dog's interest or value in certain pats, certain praise, certain play, or environmental enrichment. And I think that's probably where like the value of those rewards hasn't been established or built. And then we take away the food, and the dog's like, we had a deal. We've had a deal this whole time. And now it's like if you go to work and then all of a sudden you just don't get paid anymore. And you're like, but what is happening? Because we had a contract and now you're not holding up your end of the deal. So I just don't think I'll be participating. Thank you very much.
I use that analogy all the time with all of my clients, is the like getting paid analogy. I can't remember where I heard it from, but I often will break it down into like little bits of, if your dog, if say you're working every day and you turn up and you get paid, and you've got an agreement that every few weeks I'm going to get paid and that's how much it's going to be. And then one day you don't get paid anymore. You might still turn up the next day, but you're going to be a bit concerned. And then you might turn up the day after that and go, yeah, this isn't working for me anymore. And so that's kind of where the dog, like, you might try to start phasing that reward out, but the dog's going, yeah, something's a bit different here. I'm not used to this, or the context has changed. And so then the dog gets really confused. And so you kind of want to go between that transition really carefully. It's almost like if your boss was saying, hey, we're going to go from weekly payments to fortnightly, or from fortnightly to monthly payments. So you want to make sure that you're having that kind of conversation with your dog saying, hey, buddy, this is going to get a little bit trickier, but I'm going to help you through the process of it, rather than just going, you're not getting paid anymore. There are some dogs, though, that will still keep doing that behavior, just like they'll still keep turning up to work because they find it so intrinsically reinforcing, because either there's had a huge amount of reinforcement for doing that behavior, or it's biologically fulfilling. So that depends on the dog. But I think that's a good way of thinking of it, is like, would you keep turning up to work if you weren't getting paid, or if your boss started messing around with your pay a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. And you can build on that analogy further as well by going like, okay, but if my boss stopped paying me, then I would stop working completely, and I would never not work for less reward. And one of the things that we're trying to get our dogs to move towards, so we've got our like variable reward schedules. So we can be, when you first start training your dogs, when they're puppies or whatever age really, when you first start training them, when they're on a continuous reinforcement schedule, continuous reward schedule, that means every repetition they do, they get a reward. And what Brie was alluding to before is that anytime really that I ask my dogs to do something like on the mat or recall or drop, for example, they get released from that every time. So they get a free from that every time. So because I have to release them from the activity. Otherwise, they'd be there for the rest of their life. So, so the dogs are going to be on a continuous schedule of some type of reinforcement, because when we say free, I don't always have to. So we've got our schedule, like continuous schedule, as in reward every time. But then you've got your variable schedule of the value of reward or the type of reward. So that can change. So like if you're using food, it would be like 1 piece of food versus 3 pieces of food versus 10 pieces of food. That's variable. So if you're going to free the dog, the minimum is that the dog is now going to do what they want to do, which is still a positive thing. Like they still get like, oh, now you don't have to do this boring thing that I told you to do anymore. Now you can go and do what you want to do. So I've got that option of just that environmental release. So an example for us that I use regularly is like if I've got trucks coming in into the driveway and delivering stuff and things like that, the dogs are just excited. The truck driver's going to get out of the car and they're going to be able to get a pat and all that sort of stuff. So they'll get called to me and put into a drop, and they're expected to stay there until the truck has stopped moving and the person is out of the truck. So they get run over and then they get released, and then they can do whatever they want. So they can go and say hello to the truck driver, or they can go and look for mouse in the barn. I don't care. Do whatever you want. I don't have to do like free play with the dog, free, yay, good girl, like with the dog, because they're excited to go and do the next thing. But if you were using that level of like free into, choose your own adventure activity all the time with your dogs, and you are asking them to do like quite a lot of things, I think that's where people can get really caught in this, like the dog's like, everything you say is boring. And what if I just don't do it? Because a lot of the time the dogs just don't do it. You just let them go anyway. Like people just let them go and do whatever they want anyway.
Yeah.
And so they're like, how about instead of me doing what you say and then do what I want, I just do what I want from the beginning. And I see our handlers getting a little bit, they get disheartened probably by feeling like they're kind of making the dogs do stuff because they are not seeing the dog have any kind of like motivation to see what's going to happen from the free. Like, what reward am I going to get for this if I do this? Or like, what am I going to get at the end of this? And so it gets quite mundane and boring for the dog, and the handlers know that. And so then they get disheartened and discouraged, and they feel like they're hassling their dogs. But it shouldn't feel like that. It should feel like every time you ask your dog to do something, that's an opportunity for the dog to get a reward, and they don't know what that reward is yet. So it should be a bit more like yay for everybody. Is that kind of the same thing that you're seeing?
Sure. I think it's a couple of things. So I think it's important to remember too that what is reinforcing to the dog is what reinforces the behavior. Like if you're saying free, but you're standing there with a bowl of treats and the dog's like, no, I wanted the food, I don't want free. Yeah. Then the free isn't reinforcing, if that makes sense. So I keep saying context, but if that's the picture that you're showing the dog's going to break out of the free anticipating he's going to get something, and then he's going to get really disheartened that he didn't. So I think that it's important that a free doesn't mean free, here's a handful of food, because then your free becomes your yes marker. So does that make sense? So if you condition free food, that becomes a condition response to that word. So if your dog is in that drop position and you go free, and then they come over and they're like, hey buddy, where's my treat? That says to me that the dog is kind of going, I don't actually understand free as in go sniff and do whatever I want. I think free is I'm going to get something from you. So I think, and that's where you can work out what's reinforcing. Like if the dog wants the food, or the dog wants the free, or the dog wants the tug, we can use that. But I think if you know your dog's going to come to the food and you're not wanting to use food so much, that's when I would maybe pop the food away. Yeah. Or I'd have it out of the picture, and then I'd give the dog a free, because it's getting confusing to the dog of it's getting its hopes up that it's going to get what it wants. And then it's coming down and going, nope, that's not what I thought it was going to be. So yeah, I think did that kind of make sense?
Yeah, I think I haven't really thought about that before, because I use free for everything. But I think you're talking about like it's our terminal marker for everything. Yeah. And it does mean go free and do what you want. But it also means like I can reward you. So you might get a pat, you might get a game, you might get like, yay, good girl, bit of praise, or you might get choose your own adventure. But I can see what you're saying about if that marker means, so like when I'm doing like trick training with my dogs, my yes marker is yes, come and get food from me. Like that's what that marker means. Whereas free means like there's, yeah, this activity is finished and you've done it correctly. Yay. And maybe
For sure.
maybe I'll give you a reward for that. Maybe I won't. But I see what you're saying. Like if you've used free treat, free treat, free treat, that would be looking a lot like my yes marker in
Exactly.
my trick training. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, 100%. So what you could even do to test that would be to set the dog up in like a drop stay and have your food and go, okay, free, and see if the dog breaks to come get the food from you, and then put the dog back in a drop and then use your verbal yes marker and see if the dog is breaking that drop for the yes marker to come get the reinforcer, or if the dog is in the drop and you say free and the dog goes and sniffs and does whatever it wants, or like you can see what the dog's anticipating there. And if the dog's coming to you for food every single time, even when you're saying free, that's when I would go, okay, I think the dog's got a different understanding. We do this a lot like with our sports dogs and things, because you want them to hold a drop stay for a while, but you want them to understand that, you know, free or yes or whatever word it is going to break them out of position. But the intent when they come out of that position is really different from a free where they just want to go, you know, potter off and sniff, to a free when they're going, well, usually after free, she feeds me. So that would be where I would test and see if the dog actually is understanding. Like it's just clarifying your marker words and your commands with the dogs, I think is important, because you could still go free and then give the dog pats and cuddles. But even then that's like a conditioned pairing between the word free, you're going to get some sort of praise. So I think it's important for the handler to have a really clear idea of what free looks like for the dog, like what that picture looks like, and if that's reinforcing enough for the dog. Yeah.
Because I'm just thinking, because of that example, I'm just thinking what my dogs would do in that situation. And I guess free for us, like if I've asked my dog to hold a drop, it then told them free, I would absolutely expect that they might, I totally expect they would come to me to get a reward from me, and it would be pats, praise, whatever, but they don't have to. Like they can choose. So usually, so say in my truck driver example, if I say free, there's sweet fuck all chance they're coming to me to get the pat.
They're out of there.
They're like, truck driver is about to cop a lot of Labrador right now. Come here. So yeah, I guess, yeah, that's a good point, and something for people to think about is like, what does that mean? For my dogs and my context, free means, so one of the best ways I heard this explained was by Pat Stewart, who explained the concept to me of training the dogs for action versus training them for abstinence. And realistically, our therapy dogs are trained for abstinence far more than they're trained for action. So if you think about our position, so the things that we ask our dogs to do is a recall on the mat, holding boundaries, so not just jumping straight out of the car, not just running straight through the front door. I forgot the other ones that I said. Recall, mat, boundary, drop. They're impulse control, which is basically like a leave it activity, sit, and social walk. So all of those activities really are about impulse control. So I've asked you to do something, and now I need you to stop thinking you're going to do whatever you had planned already and do what I'm telling you to do now. And I'm not expecting you to do it to like an obedience, a high quality obedience standard. Like we're not looking for like perfect positions in, you know, like we're not looking at, I'm just looking for the impulse control in the activity and huge reliability. Like I don't really care like it can look a little bit like and the dogs can be a bit like, like, you know, eye roll kind of thing. What I care about is the reliability of the task, because that's what we use in our work. So all of those things I just described, we use that stuff in our work every day. So mostly the recall, the mat, and the leave it, the impulse control would be the ones. And some boundaries stuff gets used fairly often. So those are the things that I'm using all the time. And I use those activities to keep my clients safe, to keep my dog safe, and to navigate the dog around the interaction with the client so that I can kind of guide what I think would be useful for this client, but also what I'm reading from the client's body language around how they like to interact, what they like from the dog, et cetera, et cetera. So it's not that important to me that it's like hugely snappy. You know, when you're building like a lot of drive in your obedience in your dogs and you're looking for that snappy, like my border collie, you know, like he's straight into position and he's like, it's all very like, ah. Whereas my lab, like I'll be like on the mat and she just drags her feet like, and her little face is like, this is the worst. It's the worst thing ever. You know, she's not doing that like sprinting to the mat and like jumping on the mat and then looking at me like I'm doing it, like, that's training for action. I don't care if she drags her feet and she looks like she's like lame, because really what I'm doing when I'm putting my dog in position is I'm closing a window of opportunity for them to self-reinforce right now. And 98% of their life is them self-reinforcing, doing whatever they want. So when I close that window, they're kind of like, oh, bummer, like lame. So I need to show her what on the mat means, and and we can use food to do that. I absolutely use food with my young dogs to do that. I use my lead to do that as well. I'm just going to show you what I say on the mat. That's what this means. You go on this mat and then you just stay there until I tell you free. So if it's going to look a bit different to like versus when we do trick training with the dogs and we've got the food out and we might have the clicker out or something like that, you got a different dog. Like it's training for action and they're very like, hell yeah, like
totally. Yeah.
So that's the reality of working with the dogs. But to get the dogs through the training part of they're introducing them to this kind of, hey man, like these are kind of our expectations and this is what we're working towards. I feel like for a lot of dogs, that's a bit of a shake up to what they're used to. And that might be a little bit tricky for maybe their handlers, not realizing that it is quite a shake up and that we should definitely be gradually, because I think they see our criteria sheet for the videos and they think I've just got to do that, but not realizing like exactly what it takes in gradually showing the dogs. And so if you're using those food rewards and you're doing that with the dogs, that's fine, but gradually changing up your rewards and gradually coming off of that whilst you're also in the background over here increasing the value and motivation in the other rewards that you're offering, the enrichment, you know, choose your own adventure stuff, the praise, the pats, the play, increasing the value over there. And then starting to, I like to tell people to do, sometimes when you say free, sometimes you do give them food, sometimes you play with a toy, sometimes you give them a pat and start to change up the rewards that way so that the dog's not always expecting food. What do you think? Is that what we should be doing? Or do you think that we should be telling people lose the food so it's just not a part of the picture and just use your other rewards? What do you like to do?
I think for me with stays, like the way that I want to teach a stay is it's actually a perfect chance for me to clear up my communication with the dog, right? And so I've got all my different marker words, you know, I've got my yes marker and my good boy, good girl, stay there, I'll bring the food to you kind of duration marker. For me, yes is a terminal marker, but it's a terminal come get your food marker. So yes, break out of the position. You can come and get your food from me. If I say free, he can get up and go do whatever he wants. But he very rarely, if I say free, will come and pester me for food straight away because he goes, well, she's not she's not marked a behavior. She's not said that's good and I want reinforcement, if that makes sense. That's just the way that I do it though with my personal dogs. But I think it could get confusing for the dogs if you were using free and not paying with food, but you were with sometimes paying with food. It'd be like using your yes marker. So we see this all the time. You go into say you're in an obedience ring and they're walking around with their dog and they go, yes, good dog. And then they go, yes, good dog again. And they just keep marking the dog. And then they've got 20 more exercises to do before they get out of the ring and get the food. But you've used your marker. They think in their head, like, yes, I'm capturing that behavior and the dog's loving that. But if your yes is a terminal marker to get the reinforcer, you want to be careful when you're using that. So if you're kind of doing that with your free as well, then the dog's kind of, I think as long as the dog's not pairing free as I'm going to get the food, it'll change the meaning of the free. Like the free will become your yes marker, I think. But I think as long as the handler is really clear on what they mean with the dog. So I can have a different set of expectations for my dogs of my marker words, and you can have a different set for yours. But I think as long as the owner and the dog are clear on them, that's the important part. Because if you want to say free and feed your dog, that's no skin off my nose. But if you're saying free and then you're not feeding the dog after having fed the dog every single time, that marker word is going to start to lose its impact a little bit and start to confuse the dog. Does that sort of put it together?
Yeah, and I'm just thinking about, so I did make another little lot of videos. I think it must have been about a year ago, because I used my livestock guardian dog. She was 5 months old, on like food, doing these exercises with food to show her this is what I mean by this. And I'm introducing pressure, guiding into positions as well, because I really like to show people, like, so I know, because lots of people are like, oh, my dog knows sit, so I don't need to teach them how to use negative reinforcement into the sit, which I totally see where that comes from, except that there will be a point where you say sit and the dog doesn't sit. And so to move away from the sit constant asking, and dogs, because like that's the same thing, like you're going to lose the value of that word. And also I'm working here and I've got a client that's paying for this session, so I'm telling you, like, I'm not going to spend 8 minutes trying to tell you to go on your mat, or I'll put you on the mat. It's as simple as that. So I like to teach people the negative reinforcement into positions. But so for everyone who's listening, that is when we're using our lead or collar pressure to guide the dogs into the spot. So if you say on the mat and they don't do it, you can then go on the mat and take them by the lead or the collar and put them on the mat. And then you're showing them using that pressure. So when people are first learning that, I made a whole video series of like, see how this dog, I'm going to teach her to yield to my pressure with the food. So I'm using luring her into position, lure into a drop, lure her into the drop, lure her into the drop. And then, so luring, everyone, is when you've got food in your hand and the dog is following your hand. So that's what most people would be taught at puppy school. So you're luring her into the drop, and then I put my hand on her collar and I just hold her collar. So no pressure, just get her used to, there's now a hand on you and you're luring into the drop. And then I go, okay, now I'm going to follow her down with a little bit of pressure, lure her down to that little bit of pressure. Okay, now I'm going to ask with a little bit of pressure and lure down so she understands what's happening here. And I can start charging my word drop as well, teaching her that that's what this picture is. And then you can see that I can just put my hand on the collar, tiny little bit of guiding pressure in the right direction, and she understands that's a tactile cue for the word drop. She doesn't jam up at that. She doesn't get overwhelmed or like push against that, because she understands that the way to turn pressure off is to yield to it. So I made this little video series of that, like for people that are using food, so that they can start going, okay, that's okay. But I can also, while I'm using food, I can also introduce this negative reinforcement as well. And then from there, I can go, okay, now I'm going to start mixing up the other thing. I don't know if you see this, Brian. People have got dogs that are like 4 years old and they haven't faded their lures. So I think they've gone to like puppy school and been shown how to lure the dogs into positions, and then that's all they ever did. And so they're still luring, like then with food, like in the dog in position, and like way old dogs. And I'm like, what? Have you started fading your lure? And they're like, what the hell is that? And I'm like, who taught you the lure? Like, what is happening here? So that people know when you do that with like dogs and you lure them. So remember what I'm saying, the dog with their nose, they follow your hand and you kind of guide their body into position by them following your hand. When you train dogs like that, you don't keep holding the food and doing it that way for the rest of the dog's life. You don't have the food in your hand, you've got it somewhere else, and you pretend you've got it in your hand, and then you reward from your other hand, and then you can move on to smaller signals as well, and you're pairing your voice commands as well, and then you want to kind of work towards, I think it's handy to have hand signals and or voice commands. So I like to work on those separately as well, and just like just voice commands is great, but I use my hand signals for stuff as well. And also when the dogs get older and they can't hear, it's super handy. But the most common thing I use all day, every day is the tactile signals for the dogs. Like, because I don't have to stop my conversation or get in my dog's line of sight.
Yeah, for sure.
I use my tactile all the time. So I think if we haven't even gotten to the point of fading our lure with the food, I think we're a long way from changing the reinforcer to praise and play. You know,
I think like, because I've even got a note here that I was like, I need to make sure I mention this, but this is where it's really cool to talk about treats are a very micro way to influence a dog versus a tug or a toy is very macro. And I think it was Pat Stewart that said that, not to drop his name again, but
we love that. We love that.
Yeah.
He does not listen to my podcast.
But I'm pretty sure I heard it from him. He was like, treats are really micro and toys are really macro. And I don't know where he got it from, but that just really resonated with me in that transition period. So if you think of food being this really small way of being able to maneuver your dog around into like really nice little positions, if you tried to do that with a ball or a tug, you're not going to get the same precise positions from the dog. Not that we need super precise positions in therapy dogs, but if you've got like a border collie herding a ball, they're going to be way out in the distance trying to herd it, and they're not going to come in really nice and close to you. So it might be easier to teach that dog with the food first and then go, okay, well, we've done 100 repetitions of sit. Now I'm going to use the ball one day, and maybe I'll lure the dog up kind of with the ball, and the dog goes, oh, I just follow the ball up with my eyes and I sit magic, get the marker, and I get the ball. But I think where people get stuck on the luring is not having a really clear marker system. Like kind of what I was saying before, like if you're luring the dog around and then just letting it eat the food, you're not taking a photo and capturing that behavior for the dog and saving it for later. You're just letting the dog follow the food around. So it's not actually learning the next step in that process. So I think if you can lure your dog into the sit, mark, yes, then feed, then the dog's starting to get like, oh, it's when my bum hits the ground that I get this word and it marks it and I get my food. Because I think that's where, like you're saying, they get stuck on that lure forever. And it's really hard to get them off if they've been doing that for 4 years, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And the dog doesn't like actually know the word sit.
Has no idea.
They have no idea. Yeah. Yes. So all these things combine, and everyone, like people listening might be like identifying with different bits and pieces of what we're saying, like, oh my God, that's what I've been doing. Or there might be a couple of things like along the way that you're like, oh my God, like, okay, so that, or maybe we've just created more questions for people as well. But it is pretty complex. So when you get into the real mechanics of training dogs, there's more to it than what you saw at puppy school, basically. My video library is designed so that you can literally just copy what I'm doing in the videos without a huge amount of understanding. And for a lot of dogs, that will work, but it's not going to work like that for every dog. It's not going to work like that for every handler. We have got the information. So it's all, the theory is in our 4 and 5 day handler courses. But a lot of our dogs are starting, they get access to that training video library before they do those courses. And so they haven't got the full theory yet. But if you just copy what I'm doing in the videos, like you'll find like, oh yeah, okay, cool. But if it's not working, that's when they need to come back and go, okay, so what am I missing here? And we need to look at their specific dog and go, okay, so what is already, and get their history. What does the dog already know? What have we already been doing? What's the process been so far? And do we have realistic expectations of this dog for right now? Because it's all well and good to look at my 5-month-old Labrador in these videos, she's doing what she's told. That's really different to your 5-year-old dash hound who's been living a life of luxury for 5 years.
Yeah.
Or your 8-year-old pug who's been doing whatever the fuck they want for 8 years and has no concept and has never, has gaslit you into thinking that they understand what the word sit means when they truly don't.
No idea.
It's going to be a really different process, and introducing dogs to negative reinforcement as well, that can take quite a lot of skill from the handler. Some people are naturals, like especially horse people. We use negative reinforcement for our horses all the time. So some people are real naturals at it. Some people aren't. Some people are mechanically all over the place. And so that's going to take longer because your mechanical cues, so any guiding pressure, anything you do with your lead, anything you do with your hand signals, anything like that, that's all your mechanical stuff. That's all visual and tactile stuff to the dog. That is communication. So if your stuff is still a bit all over the place, that's going to be inconsistent communication to the dog, and that will really slow down the process as well. But I just want to encourage people to not be actually looking at that assessment criteria sheet, which is why I really didn't want to publish it, that criteria sheet, because I know that people will try to train to the test, and I see it in their videos all the time. They try to train to the test and then go, oh, I could never do we could never do it. Or they can get like, oh, this is what I see a lot.
You can get so close.
They're so close. They're so close. But the reason they can't do it is because they skipped steps 3 and 4 back here, or like steps 2 and 3 back in their foundations. Yeah. They've skipped those steps because the dog could sort of do the duration, for example, like their duration's okay. And you see they get to that like 85, because I tell people if your dog can be in a drop for 1 minute, they can do an hour. Simple as that. Like that's what they can do it. They can do it. So if you're telling me that the dog can only get to 3 or 4 minutes out of their, I think our drops are they 10 minutes? I don't know.
I think they're 5 minutes.
They're 5 minutes.
Are they?
Yeah. I think they're 5 minutes. They used to be an hour.
5. Yeah.
Used to be an hour, Brie. Used to be an hour, but the
I know people would pull their hair out if that would.
I know, and I'm like, we used to do our courses face to face over a week, and we'd have all the dogs in a drop in my backyard together, and we'd go in the house, like all the handlers. Leave the dogs out there for an hour.
Yeah, do an out of sight stay. Yeah,
on day 5 for an hour. But anyway, so I think adjusting our expectations is important, and making sure that we're not skipping those foundation steps. And I think we're kind of touching on and making it sort of pretty clear that this process of moving from food to non-food rewards is really key, and getting the markers right is really key.
Absolutely. I think like if you look at it in, say you're teaching a performance skill, right, as an extreme example. So when you're teaching like a really focused heel, I have to take so long to get the dog's position right before I even start moving my hand away a little bit with the food, before I even start like lifting my arm up and going away with the food. So that takes, for some dogs, it can take months depending on the drive of that dog and the focus of that dog. If I've got clear markers and things like that, it's going to make it faster because the dog will start to put it together, like they'll piece the puzzle together. But just in a precision position like that, that's going to take a really long time. There are things you can do to speed it up, but you're not cutting corners in that though, because you have a very specific goal. And I think like having the criteria sheet for your skills is really good, because people go, all right, I need to hit a 5-minute drop stay. But what I think we're forgetting is like, okay, well, if you need to do 5 minutes, let's make sure we can do longer than that. Like, let's do a 7-minute stay. Let's do a 10-minute stay. Let's just teach it in so many different contexts and so many different places. Don't under-train it just for the sake of trying to get it done quickly and skating by, because you'll be able to see in the assessment, and I can see as soon as I turn up at the session, like, okay, we've not really practiced this much, and all I'm going to say to you when I turn up to do that session is like, okay, let's start again.
Totally.
And it's going to take you longer anyway. So just like follow the steps, follow the process. They're there for a reason, because we've done the hard yards ourselves and gone, that doesn't work if you rush it.
Yeah, or if you don't put the time into it as well. And for some people, not understanding the theory is where they get stuck as well. So if you're that type of person, whereas some people are very like, just tell me the steps. Just tell me the steps and I'll do it. And they're happy to check back in along the way and go like, what's next? And we go, okay, this is next, and they go, okay, this is, and then they'll do that, Some people, and I would like people to be wrapping their heads around the theory, but there's a lot in it. So, we do teach it, the basic theory, and assess on it, but the amount of knowledge in the theory, it requires immersion in the dog space and hearing lots of different people talking about it in different ways and really processing that, and then practicing stuff, and then getting another dog trainer to look at it again, and then getting another dog trainer, and sometimes even really experienced dog trainers or dog sports people, they will get even like stuck somewhere with their dogs on their sport. And it just takes, they have to go and see Michael Ellis or whatever. And then they offer one little thing and then it's all happening again and we're moving forward again or whatever. So it can be frustrating. So I don't want people to give up. Please don't get frustrated and give up. If you do decide that it's not for you, as in that you don't have the time to put into this and you're not enjoying, you're like, this is like, I'm not that in having that much fun. I'm not that into this. I don't want to spend all this time with my dog. Then I think give it away. But if you're just stuck with some of the activities, please don't give up. Please don't give it away, because a lot of the time the trainers can look at it, or you can just come to the classes and the trainers can look at it and go, you know what, I reckon if you tweak this, or if you just do a little bit more of that, then things can start getting back on track again. And that's a really good feeling when that happens. That's like a really nice feeling when you have that type of thing happen.
For sure. And I don't think anything that you guys do is like technically hard to learn for a dog. Like, it's not technically tricky. Like a 5-minute drop stay is challenging for the dog depending on the type of dog that you've got. But if that's something that you do a little bit of every single day and it becomes part of the dog's life and the dog's getting used to doing a sit stay here and a drop stay there, then it becomes a lot easier. And I think if it's when you do maybe your like one training session a week and then you go, why isn't the dog getting it? Like, you need to sort of make it part of their ritual and part of their day-to-day, so that you can build it up a little bit each day. Like we do, trainers say do 5 minutes a day, but do 5 minutes and make a tiny bit of progress and then call it a day, and then make a tiny bit of progress the next day and then call it. Like, leave on that high note so the dog's going, wow, that was really good, that was really fun, rather than, I think we're seeing a lot of owners get really frustrated. Like, I keep going back to the stays because that's probably where people get stuck, is the long stay, but they get frustrated because they go, oh, we just keep getting to 4 minutes and 30 seconds and not making any progress. So I think that's where it's like, just take 4 minutes and 35 seconds, like just take little bits if that's what you need to do to build your confidence, because 4 minutes in a month's time will look like nothing if you're doing it all the time. I
just can't really believe that it's that big of an issue. So I hear it. I just don't get it. And the whole time you're talking, I don't know if you could see my facial expressions, but I was like, why is that not that big of an issue for me? I think what it is that all my dogs are trained for lifestyle. I don't do training sessions. I'm not that big of a fan. Like, I really Like when you were talking about getting a focus heel before, I was like, I'd rather die than spend all that time.
That's my favorite thing to teach. I love it.
Sounds so boring. And like it would take such
very
a
tedious.
long, tedious. That sounds so
Yeah.
tedious. I love watching videos of people's focused heels that are 60 seconds or less in length.
Real quick.
Just reels. And there's got to be some music. Don't mind like a star wipe edit halfway through. Like if you could wear a costume, that's also.
I'll do that next time. Yeah.
One of those like blow up costumes where it's like a dinosaur or something. I'm into that.
A T-Rex.
Some of those like bike clubs in the States have been doing like funny videos and they're all in
That's full on.
I'm like, that's the content that's my outline. Like, so I'm like,
I'll write that down.
Fantastic. But my dogs are for our lifestyle, which includes their work as therapy dogs. They're trained for that lifestyle, basically. We do a little bit of mucking around with some, marker training from time to time, whatever, but not consistently. Actually, one of my little clients is teaching Nala to touch a button at the moment. So that's been pretty cute. So that's fun. But I'm doing that for her. Like couldn't care less if Nala touches a button. But complex skills for therapy dogs is fun. So don't be disheartened by what I'm saying, guys. Like if you teach the dogs to press buttons and stuff like it, and to roll a dice and stuff like that, like it is really fun to do stuff like that in the sessions. But anyway, so I think what it is that like you're saying, so to me, thinking of like, well, I don't do a 5-minute training session with my dogs every day, but I spend sometimes an hour and a half doing just me and my livestock guardian dog. Most days it would be at least an hour in the morning. Most days would be an hour and a half of just me and her, and I'm training her the whole time. So the whole time is about what's acceptable to interact with me, what's acceptable to interact with the livestock, what's acceptable to interact with the environment. We do fun things together. I bury whatever she found that night. We do a little patrol. Go for a ride in the buggy.
I think you hit the nail on the head though, is like you guys make it part of your life, like you're part of your routine. And I think what a lot of people are probably struggling with is that the dogs, for them, it's a project to work on. They're teaching the dog rather than living with the dog in the way that they intend to work with the dog. And I think that's where people are getting stuck, is going, I'm training my dog to do this skill for the test. And I'm like, no, you're teaching your dog to do this skill for life, so that it can do this as part of, like, look at the way that Sam lives with her dogs, and she has her dogs as part of her life, and they can drop and they won't go over that man's fence and they won't run up to the truck driver until she says so. That's so that you can live harmoniously with your dogs. That's a 5-minute session of just getting, hey dog, sit there, wait, the truck driver's coming past. That is you doing that in that setting. But I think a lot of people don't think of it that way, and so they do get their treat pouch out and they do their 5 minutes or whatever. And you can do it that way too, but your dog learns, okay, when we're in training mode, we perform the behavior, but I don't have to do it elsewhere. So holding your dog accountable day to day is, I think that's the other part of it, is like living with your dog in the way that you want them to be working as well.
Yeah. And I guess like, if I've got to go into this coffee shop, then my dog's going to be in a drop at the front door where I can see them, out of the way of foot traffic, and otherwise I'm not going in this coffee shop. So guess what's happening, dog? You're going in the drop.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I guess it's things like that, like, the way that we live. Like, to me, to think that a dog can't do a 5-minute drop, I guess if I went outside and asked Kiki, my livestock guardian dog, to do a 5-minute drop now, she would be like, like she would drop, but she would just, like, at any point, I guess she would be like, I can smell something going on over there. But it would never be the case that I would be like, oh, she can't do it. I just put her back in the drop. Like, as long as there was no predator for her to kill or chase or whatever, bark at. So, and that's been really important because I'm teaching her to be calm around the livestock. So it has been really important that I can put her into a drop, because that's me showing her, like, this is the arousal state. that I want you at.
Mm.
And it's not drop and wait for me to reward you with food and big, it's drop and just settle. Like, just, that's it. That's it. All it is. It's just drop. So if she gets up, she just goes back into the drop. And I think, like, I might be cleaning the goat enclosure for 15 minutes and, if she gets up, just put her back. If she gets up, just put her back. But I think it's that, like, length of time stuff where the dogs can realize, like, if you break a drop, you're just going back into your drop. It's not break your drop and then go and self-reinforce all over the place. It's just go back into your drop. And then I think that time for them becomes not a factor because time stops. Like, if I put you in a drop, time stops for you and time restarts again when I say free. Does that kind of make sense? Like, they don't, there's no opportunity. There's nowhere else to be, or there's nothing else to worry about because you're in a drop. So it wouldn't matter if it's 1 minute or 5 minutes or an hour, like, the window is closed for you to do whatever else. Your job is just to stay here in this drop. But I wonder if that's part of why, for me, I just think, I don't understand why a dog can't do a 5-minute drop, but probably because I'm doing, like, long stuff because we have to. Do you know what I mean? Like, we have to do that stuff.
For sure. And I think too, like, it's the temperament, possibly the different temperaments of different dogs. So, like, I don't know, maybe she's different, but maybe Kiki's a bit more, like, slow and methodical when she's going into a drop. Like, she's probably not sitting in a drop in the Sphinx position ready to, like.
Usually not.
She's probably, like, flopped to the side and she's like, oh, okay, I'm going to be here for a while. And
she flops to the side pretty quickly. But sometimes I'm putting her in a drop because her arousal's too high.
Too high, but she's seeing the drop as a soothing. Then
she will Sphinx, like,
you
know how they're like, and that's when I would, like,
be coiling that spring.
La, 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 la. The goats are running around. I'm like, that's got nothing to do with you. But so she's not settled when I put her in the drop. But that's how I settle her, is like, okay, drop. And then I wouldn't walk away from her then and go and keep doing my chores. I would stay there with her to help her go, like, okay, so we're in it together, I guess. Like, we're both just here. And then when I see
settling,
her, we're both settling. And then you'll see her, like, pop that hip. And when I see her, like, pop a hip, I'm like, she's started to settle into this drop. And it is and then it's not long before she's, like. But you're right in that, like, some dogs, especially, like, nervous dogs, or those really high energy dogs, like, there's some dogs that don't want to be away from their handlers, so as soon as the handler leaves, the dogs lose their mind. Like, that sort of thing. I think you can see that coil in the dog. Yeah. And I think for our therapy dogs, should be aiming for more of that I'm settled in a drop. So, which is, again, outside of that obedience Sphinx. It's not actually a working position for us. It's a settled position.
And I think that is so critical when you're thinking about, like, let's fade the food out, but it goes further back of how do we reinforce the mindset of that position rather than, like, so if you're reinforcing with the drop, out of the position, come out of the position, come get the reward, come get at the reward. I often say to clients, like, no, that's where I would put the dog in the drop and I would go, good drop, and I would slowly and calmly pop the food on the floor and let them eat that food slowly, and then I'd go stay, and I'd slowly, and you can hear my tone like even drop down, and it's like very calm because I'm reinforcing that you stay there, I'll bring the good stuff to you. When you get the treat, it's a calm chewing the treat. It's not this snatching it out of my hand. It's staying there. Everything we're doing is, like, just coming down a level. And I think that prepares the dog for, oh, this is a relaxing thing that I'm doing. And I'll often practice this too with a dog, that if the dog's like, you stay and can't be too far from the handler, I'll practice this, just sit at a park bench with the dog, pop my lead under my foot, the dog's on a drop. If they get up, they feel a little bit of pressure, they go back in the drop, and then I just drop the food down onto the floor, really calm, good dog, good drop. And I just keep that tone really low. And like you were saying before, figuring out how to pat and praise your dog, you don't want to be praising your dog in that level of like, hey, good job, buddy. Like, no, you're calming the dog down. Yeah. You were like, shh, everybody. It's like, yeah, think like we're trying to put a baby down for a nap. Like, good job, settle. And I think how you deliver the reinforcement. And I do think sometimes that breaking them out of that position to come get the reward can sometimes have the dog then end up sitting in that Sphinx position going, when am I getting out? When am I getting out? Because I want to get the reward. So thinking about what reinforces your, like how your dog is getting reinforced, like what mindset is your dog in when it's getting rewarded, I think is really important too.
Yeah. Do you know what makes me think of as well is when we have conflict happening to get into the position. And I think that's not the right time to ask for duration in a position, is when there's still that ongoing conflict getting into position, because
100%.
if you think about like what you were just saying, then the dog's not in the mindset of like being settled there. They're still like, this is bullshit. Like, what just happened? Sort of
How
thing.
long do I need to be here before I can do my thing again? They're like checking their little watch, you know?
Yeah. And I think getting the mechanics of that right is going to be a really important part of that, because if we're trying to force dogs down into positions and they're jamming up and they don't understand what's happening, that's a lot of conflict and confusion and arousal and stress for the dogs. But I see people that are still having to, like, they're very clunky with trying to put dogs into a drop, and then they're also asking for duration. Whereas I just think it's so important to scale all of that back and learn how to do that properly. Like, learn how to ask, give a tactile cue to a dog, learn to apply a little bit of pressure, and then, show them what this means without it becoming a big problem for the dog. Because we don't want that. We don't want dogs feeling that stress or over being asked with a tactile cue, negative reinforcement to go into position. It shouldn't be like that. It shouldn't be that the dog is confused or worried or stressed by it or jams up or anything like that. It should be introduced in a really like, hey man, it's not a big deal. This is just what this means. I can show you what it means, et cetera, et cetera. And then I think get that happening. So like, I don't worry if my dogs if they break the drop, because the first thing I teach them is the tactile cues into positions. And so all of them are like, oh, tactile cue, like, and they just go, oh, okay, into position, because they know that I'm not. So when I use my tactile cues, so I'm talking about guiding, like collar pressure, lead pressure, I don't just, if the dog doesn't do it, I don't just like yank and increase the pressure, because that doesn't fix anything. And it just causes stress and it causes dogs to look up. But it's a waiting game. I see this as a bit of a waiting game of like, I've given you this cue and now I'm just going to be patient while you have a think about what your options are here. Because it won't take that long before they realize there are no options apart from going into this drop or going into this sit. But if that ever happens for me with my dogs, if I try and cue them into that position and they go, I don't think, I'm just going to maybe do something else, and I have to wait it out, you better believe that I release that dog so fast once they get into the position. The second they get into the position, because I want to gaslight them into thinking that they dicked around. You dicked around for all this time just to go into this position. Or like whether, I'm using my livestock guardian dog as an example because she's just hilarious unit of a thing. Where I'll like be trying to bring her, like she doesn't want to come out of the barn at the moment. She wants to be in the barn all day doing whatever. And sometimes when I try and put her away, I'll be like, come on. And she's like, what about I don't come on? And I'm like, you're going to feel really silly about this because I'm going to gaslight you. So what I do is I like wait her out, because you can't catch her, wait her out, And I've taught her she has to eventually, like, I just don't play with her. She's like, well, what if we play you chase me? And I'm like, well, we're not playing that, but you will come here. She has to target my hand. So like I just hold my hand out and she has to come to me. And so put her collar basically in my hand. And so eventually she like dances around a bit or whatever. And then eventually she'll like walk over. And then I take her by the collar and I put her in the pen and I go in there with her and then do all her favorite things in there. And then I'll like, if I have, depending on how much time I got, so definitely there's a game, definitely there's a cuddle, but then sometimes I'll just like let her straight back out again and then go and do something fun out there. So she is like, oh, I wasted all that time like not getting all that fun stuff when I was dicking around by myself out here.
Absolutely.
That works for her. I don't know if that works for every dog, but that works for her.
I think it's a little bit of that, like, let me show you that there's something in it for you. And I think you can avoid a lot of that conflict if you are conditioning your dog to leash pressure from day one, or if you can't do it from when they're puppies, so you get them when they're a bit older. That's when I would still be spending a lot of time doing that with the dog, like pressure on the lead down, like lure them into the drop. That's what I would be doing with them well before I'm like putting the lead under my foot and asking them to drop. So because then when you do put them in that drop position and you do have the foot, like your lead under your foot, then the dog does get up and goes, oh, actually, I have so much history here of me following the pressure that it's just so instinctive for me to lie back down. And then when you feel the dog do that and release the pressure on the lead, you can just reward them and go, good job, good choice. That was a good, whether that's a pat or whatever the dog finds. But I think that it's a bit unfair for us to be putting the dogs into the position and going, you have to drop and you have to stay here, and like kind of holding them into that spot when they're like, we haven't ever done lead pressure before. What are you talking about, crazy lady? Yeah. And that's where I think I see people getting that bit panicky towards the end, going, we've got to do the assessment. We've got to pass this 5-minute drop. Now I'm just going to like keep bringing my dog back to the bed. And I'm like, where's your reinforcement? You haven't reinforced this behavior at all. And the dog's getting super confused between the steps. Like there needs to be a little bit more bridging here, because leash pressure is so fantastic. And like you were saying before, like I think if you've ridden horses, you really understand that. And, you know, horses are all negative reinforcement. Like that's 100%. It. Like there's you can't ride a horse around and be like, go over this jump, here's a carrot. Like it doesn't work that way. And so if you can control a huge horse like that, then dogs are easy. But I think everyone should go and ride a horse at least once in their life and just turn the reins and just see what that does with the horse. And like, does their neck go the way you think they're going to go? Or like if you shift your way in the saddle, does that push the horse a certain direction? Because such small things that your body can do when riding a horse can totally shift the horse's balance and make them move in a different way. But it's the same for a dog too. Like if you shift your balance, like we do a lot of agility with Thunder, our little Jack Russell. And if I just turn myself a certain direction, he'll follow and he'll pick that up. And if I shift again in a different direction, he's getting that. But I don't need to use my voice to do that, to get him to do different things. I can just use my body language. And that is a form of pressure, because I'm presenting him like, go this way. That's the way that I want you to go. And if he doesn't get it, like say I'm telling him to go in a tunnel and he doesn't get it, I will just keep stand there and be like, nope, I'm going to wait for you to figure it out. He eventually goes through the tunnel. Yeah, good job, buddy. That's great. That's what I wanted. And then all that pressure comes off. And I think that's a really important part too, when you're getting the dog to do that drop, is that once they are in that drop, don't keep holding that lead into the drop position.
Or once they
lose
start,
and reward the dog. If the dog gets up again,
start the drop. Like then that there shouldn't be, they shouldn't be pressure all the way down. I like to ask with that pressure and then let them go. And if they start to get back up, just apply the pressure again.
It's such a horse thing. It's like walk on, bit of pressure, the horse moves, you let it go. But you're giving them that verbal cue first, asking with the pressure, the horse does it, you release. And the release is so important. It's part of the reinforcement to the dog or the horse going, yep, I've done the right thing. Then when you layer your food in, it's like a double whammy, you know. But I think that's sometimes where people get a bit confused with the leash pressure. Is like, so you're telling me to drag my dog into the drop? And I'm like, no. It's a conditioned response to the feeling of the pressure being down.
Yeah.
And then they can, put it together. So
I think we might get some questions. Let me know what people say to you as well. I reckon we're going to get follow-up questions about this conversation, and maybe we can come back and answer those and just go, okay, so what did you girls mean by this? What did you mean by that? What did you mean by that? And maybe get some specific examples or something. Because I think this is a lot of information and I get it, but I just wonder,
yes,
I think there'll be people out there that things have been made clearer. I think there's going to be people out there who've made things muddier. So if you're that person, come back to us and let us know, the questions, and we'll get Bree back and we'll go through and we'll talk about it again, and clarify anything because sometimes there's more than, a lot of the time, there's more than one answer to these questions as well.
For sure.
Or if people have got videos of their dogs that they'd be happy for us to play, maybe we can do that as well. And yeah, share the videos and then talk through like maybe what some of the things could be here or there. I don't know, just ideas, just throwing ideas out there, guys. But we need to finish up for today. I know I'm going to have a client waiting for me.
For sure.
So thank you so much, Bree, for all of your time and insights.
That's
and
all
all
right.
of your support for our teams down there. We'd be flipping lost without you. So thank you. Please continue.
No, thank you guys. We love you.
And yeah,
we love working with them.
Good. I know I just said all that without asking you, but if people come back with questions, can you come back and talk to us and we'll answer them again together?
That's cool. Yeah. That's fine.
And let me know, like, if
no,
people
I think
say
that'd be really
it's up
good.
to you.
I feel like, yeah, for sure. I think we definitely just opened a can of worms and then we were like, wait, what do we do with this? It was a lot.
But that's dog training, isn't it? Like, that's dog training.
For sure.
So,
and I think we both have such different experiences and it just makes so many, it's so hard for people to understand unless you're living in my brain or your brain. So we're just trying to get that out.
Yeah. And then I think that's cool though, to see like, well, what I do with my dogs, and then there's what Bree does with her dogs, and then there's what such and such does with their dogs. But that's what my system works for me. So
For sure.
There's something to learn from people who have systems that work for them, that they don't actually all have to be the same, and that we've got a goal in mind. Like I'm always thinking about these dogs in their workplace. Like I'm always working towards is the dogs in the workplace. And I think like people get caught up on the assessment, but like you were saying before, you've got to train for the workplace. Don't train for the assessment, train for the work. And I think that's a really cool takeaway for people. And I think that's where I've gotten a bit like lost, because I'm like, I just don't understand why it's such a big deal. But I bet that'll be part of it, because I'm not training for the assessment. I'm training for our life and our work. So I reckon that's
absolutely
a really cool takeaway. So thanks for
because
that.
you do it so much every day. No, for sure.
We have
That's
to.
all
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. Okay. I've got to go.
Awesome.
Thanks
Thank
so much.
you. No worries.
Thanks, Bree. Bye.
Cool. Bye.
Thanks for listening to the podcast. If you're interested in studying with us, but you have a few more questions before you get started, please get in touch with us by emailing info@therapydog.com.au or visiting our website, www.therapydog.com.au, for more information and our FAQs.